Hello there. Uh, Anybody here? Checking the sound and the video. Everything working okay? I do enjoy talking to myself. Hi, Apar. How you doing? Glad you could make it. Hi, Dom. Dom, I tell you, I was using that screwdriver that was part of that pack you gave me the other day. Just want to thank you for that. Hi, Indrajit. Brian, good morning. Lee. Lee from Frackin' Gulch, the rancher. The Oklahoma contingent has landed. Oh, geez. I use it all the time. Really useful. Um, Today, what I want to, or this morning, what I want to talk about is uh, what new did you get out of 2022? It was sort of like for me, it was a very strange year because it was really the second year that we had been working on the Lyrique Etude number one watch, and of course, it was the first year that we just got it. Right now, people are still gathering it up as FedEx is putting it through its paces. So, anyhow, that was a big thing this year. I'd hope to get them all out by before the end of the year, but um, it didn't happen, but it's happening now. So that'll be the beginning of the new year for a lot of people, and other kinds of things. And so, you know, I just thought that, well, maybe I tell you, I bet there's a lot of other things that you guys sort of discovered about watches or watch collections this in this last year. No, rancher. They Yeah, this is something I'm glad you brought that up, Rancher. Rancher was talking about independence, and there's so many different kinds of independence. I mean, on the one hand, you have Rolls-Royce, not Rolls-Royce, but Rolex. They are an independent. So is some guys in let's say, trying to think of what do they call it? The not a crash mob, but a one of those gang funded things, crowd funded, yeah, some crowd funded thing, and somebody they put together a movement, a dial, and so on and so forth for some relatively inexpensive watch, and but then there's then you go up sort of to all different kinds of independence. Um, if you look at the AHCI, the organization of independent watchmakers, that's where you see what I consider to be the sort of the real independence. They're not micro brands, but their production is about the same as a micro brand, but they're so different that doesn't. I mean, you take for example some of these new kids like Bennett and Peterman. Those two guys, they're a couple kids, and the stuff that they make, the watches they make, are unbelievable, and they are truly independents, but they're not uh, micro brands. They're any more than FP Journe or Carre Vuitton or Laurent Perrier are micro brands. So there's a huge range of it, and what the ranchers said is very true. You have a big range. The same thing is true, I think, with your quote major brands. I somehow think of both FP Journe, Carter Vuitton, Laurent. Perrier, even though they don't make a lot of watches, they are major brands because they sort of show what can be done with watchmaking. The AHCI, all of those guys are just amazing. Hey, Tuna, how you doing? Happy New Year's. You know, what Freudian slip? I didn't even know which one it was. Hey, Henry, how you doing, man? Floodland 99. Happy New Year's to you too. I learned in 2021 once I want too much money, yeah, how easily secondary market prices can be manipulated. Yeah, oh, yeah, that was a slip between a Rolls Royce. I've always wanted to get, well, I had a long wheelbase saloon, what was it called? The Silver Spur. Drove that thing around for about 5 years, and it was like a big, wonderful toy. I really enjoyed it. And, so I was they had one that came out that I really like a lot called the Wraith, the new ones. It's not the Silver Wraith, but they've come out with a whole new line of Rolls Royces that, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, probably, I call it the new line. But they simply took off the silver, and so instead of having a silver ghost, they just have a ghost. They have a phantom. What are some of the other ones? They have a bunch of them. Well, I always wanted to get one of the Wraith, but yeah, I can't afford a Wraith. And so I'll have to save up for that one. Um, and so I was thinking about that right before we started, and boom, out it came. And you're right, it was a Freudian slip. I wonder, after thinking of that, the guy who was, I guess, the major guy behind Rolex, he may have been thinking, Timex and Rolls Royce. That's a good combination back then. Who knows? Um, Still trying to figure out what independent means. Yeah. Nothing in 2022, but 2021 was a real eye opener. Found your channel. Yay. Philosophy. My philosophy is one that learn about quality first and then find out where the best deal you can get on it is. Um, what are some other things? Yeah, I had this last year, one thing I had to really, really grapple with, at least in my own mind, was the whole sort of, I guess, flood of silicone hairsprings. S- I, I, during my professional career before I retired, I was up to my ears in silicone. In fact, I even, to the point where I was programming mobile devices before I retired. Not that I was doing that as a profession, but rather working with uh, looking at it for using applications, or writing applications for it, I should say, which would be, and and I just, man, I wasn't interested in anything silicon. Now, I've got nothing against silicon used where, it has it acts like um, regular watch parts using transitional metals. But in the hairspring, you can't do that. It'll break if you try to adjust it. And so I've had to sort of reconcile myself to the fact that there's going to be that out there. But talking to guys at Agenor, talking to Kari Voot and Lannon, they have no plans on using it at all. FP Journe, I don't know. The problem is of course usually magnetization, and there are plenty of metal ones, especially ones using niobium and something else as a hairspring component. Again, Rolex, their parachrome is niobium and chromium, among few other things, but those are the main ones they use, and then Straumann hairspring, which I found is used in so many watches, way beyond the few that H. Moser puts out every year. So, um, and that one is made from niobium and titanium, and it works. I mean, it works great. I understand the problem. My FP joint gets magnetized a whole lot. Only my CS does. My resonant, nothing, and they're right next to each other in the watch case. So I don't know what it is. Some watches get zapped very easily, other ones don't, and so that's sort of an ongoing thing. I The most surprised, I guess, I was very disappointed, and perhaps it's been going on since 2009. Take me a while to catch up. Is the use of silicone hairsprings in Patek Philippe, and really finding that was sort of behind the whole thing with the Geneva Seal. They said no, we don't want no stinking silicone in your watches, and so anyway. And I still like them, but I've been finding some really decent buys on not too old, but some a little older Patek Philippe's that they still have the transitional metal hairspring. When I had my old Calatrava, that thing worked beautifully. That thing was from 1968, and I had that for a number of years. Thing kept perfect time. It was small, but as watches from that period were, but had that thing for years, and I finally realized I wasn't wearing it anymore and sold it. But there's I don't think there's some reason, but it's just easier, I guess, to stick in silicon. Well, I think I'll get an Apple Watch, and then I'll have all the silicon I want. Um, yeah, you don't have to follow the herd. Absolutely not. Somebody said that if you follow the herd, the view is always the same. I think that's right. Does cost play a part in the use of silicone hairsprings? Yeah, because what you get, Brian, with silicone, you get, I mean, there are all kinds of good things for having a silicone hairspring, okay? Uh, in addition to the cost, if you look at the way silicone hairsprings are made, you get these big sheets. And I'm familiar with those sheets because in making silicone parts for computers, they come out in these sheets. I don't know. I They don't put them in a microwave, but something like that. That they come out and they 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 sort of uh, some of them are done like a photographic. They put a negative in for the sheet, and then out comes the positive, and it's in this little silicon. And they are on these big sheets that they come out and they pop them out and put them in. So you end up with far less expensive because hairsprings are very, very hard to make. And the ones that were developed by H. Moser and Rolex, by the way, I've got my whole. That's another thing that changed. My entire respect for Rolex went up 100% this last year because they were one of the three big companies that elected to develop silicon hairsprings, and I think they call them Siloxy. And so, but then when it came down to what are we going to put into our main line of watches, which are the men's watches, they use the parachrome, which is using transitional metals. So so my whole respect for for Rolex went up a notch. Anyway, I thought that was a good thing to learn about it. That there's usually the biggest problem with Rolex are some of the people who own them and make everybody like, ah. Okay, Dominic, I was never fond of silicone or anything synthetic. Prefer metals, wood, stone. Yeah, never follows herd because he can't hear because he can't herd. I don't. You guys. It's early in like, in what, Frackin' Gulch. Hey, John, how you doing? And cosplay a part, in silicone hairnets. Cosplay. I don't even know what cosplay is. I tell you, I must be getting old. All of the things they do. I need an interpreter to even watch White Lotus. Um, hey, Bill, how you doing? Yeah, for escapement, yeah, Bill, uh, silicon in an escapement is fine because it like I said, it behaves the same way as transitional metals do, except that it's no more difficult to make a an escapement with silicon or metal. I mean, you're not getting a big break. With hairsprings, though, you get a huge break. It's one of the few things that George Daniels or what's his name, Roger Smith, they never mastered making hairsprings, at least that I know of, and they're very expensive and everything else. Well, precision engineering at H. Moser working with actually they worked with the same guy that developed the Parachrome for Rolex. They developed the Strawman hairspring, and that thing is extremely popular with your top of the line watches. Um, there's some other ones too. For example, the hairspring that is in our watch had to be specially made because they use the what's it called, Agon pit regulator, and the Agon pit regulator you can regulate both the frequency and the beat, and but and so you have the whole thing is part of a single device rather than having it one holding the spring and then another one pushing it back and forth. This thing somehow does it together. And so they had to develop one that was special, and they have I think they have pretty good non-magnetism in 'em, I hope so anyway. Like I said, my FP Journe used they oh, what's it called? What's the one that the hairspring that Swatch has? I think that's what they use. So here you got this $50,000 watch with a 20-cent um anti-magnetization. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, John, there'd be a lot of hairsprings. What do I think of Gallet watches? I haven't really looked at them closely. There was some watch brand somebody asked me about the other day, and I hadn't heard of them, and so I went to look at them, and they were very interesting, and I can't remember the name. I've been doing a whole lot of things. I've had to in fact, later today, I've gotta run off and take care of watch business. How many companies make hairspray? Good question, Lee. That's okay. God, let me see. The ones that I know, Rolex makes them for themselves. Um, Autoculpa is one of the Sandoz Family Foundation brands that uh, own sort of a vertical organization made up of Parmigiani and Vacher, and then several other ones that make the cases and everything else. And Autoculpa makes the hairsprings. Beauvais makes their own hairsprings, and they do that through. They have a sort of a tech group called Demier, and so they make it. Of course, H. Moser has owns Precision Engineering, which is makes the Strassman hairspring. That's a big part of their business too. When I interviewed Edouard Malin, that was what he was telling me. you, you put out 2,000 watches a year and 50,000 hairsprings. Something's going on. Hi, William. Good morning. Hey, Watch Monkey. Tudor Black Bay 58 party. Just picked up a blue one, 2300. That's a pretty good deal. That sounds good to me anyway. Um, yeah, the thing about Black Bay is the Tudor Black Bay. What they did, they came up with a good design, I think, and they stuck with it, but making changes so that you can really recognize, that they're different watches. My favorite Black Bay is their dual time Black Bay, GMT or something like that. But I like Tudor. Something about them I like, and I'm not sure what it is. Like they're sort of like the owned by Rolex. Rolex had a disaster in 2007 when they put up 2 watches and they didn't even make nominations. Nothing wrong with that, I might add. But ever since then, they figured, we're not gonna enter that thing. We'll throw Tudor out there. We'll throw Tudor under the bus. Well, Tudor did pretty well in sort of some of the what are considered lower level ones like, Petit Aiguille, Challenger, Diver, and before that they had Sport. Those 3 were sort of the watches that weren't, considered to be all that, because they were much lower price. But, anything else, my god, you look at this last year, when I looked at the price of just the category winners, like the men's watch and this, those things are, they're going over $100,000 now. I mean, they're well over 50,000 and they're just going up, up, up. And it's like, you know, I don't know what's going to happen. How do you get a really good watch? Uh, I mean, by really good, I mean by top watchmakers when the prices are that high. Eastern Europe make their own hairsprings. Good point. So does China. ETA uses Navavox. That's what FB Journ's using. At least in back in see my Chronomet Souvain is from 2007. I think that's what they have in it. I think when I take it in for service, I'm gonna say, "Hey guys, could you give me a new hairspring? Do you think you could do that for me?" If it were a Strawman, I'd really like it. Hi, Hans. Hey, Flippin' Zippo, how are you? Truman, good to see you. It said the Swatch Group bought the silicone hairspring patent from Ulysse Nardin 10 years ago, and that they put in all their watches nowadays. Yeah, I know they're putting them in everything. One of the things I had the review of on who was it? Girard-Perregaux and Glashütte Original the other day, and I was looking at all the watches, and one watch I always really liked was their pano inverse because they have the sort of the regulators and I guess the balances. You can see that from the front of the watch, and it's sort of a like a it looks like a fly or something, or sort of a butterfly maybe. Um, and what you have these two uh, swan neck regulators. And I was, what is that? Well, the one on the right is regulate the frequency, and the one on the left regulates the beat. And I just thought, now that's so cool. Well, if you put in silicon hairsprings, you know, you're only going to have one wing. And so they said, okay, you can leave in your regular hairspring, and they have a couple that are still in the Glashütte original watches. They still have some of the ones made from transitional metals. Ah, out shopping. popped into a bar. Hans? Now here I know it's about 8:20 in the morning, but I guess elsewhere it's not. While wife's in the shops. I think that's a great idea. There was this one thing I think they had for guys, they had while their wives were shopping, they had these big comfortable chairs, and they'd give you a glass of brandy to sit down and shut up while your wife spent all your money, or in my case, our money. Let's see. Um, well, picking up a Tudor, 1926 on our home trip, to the Keys Monday. Oh, that'd be fun. That'll be nice. Hey, Bill, to address higher prices, smartwatch peeps find out about yeah. Oh, I know. I know our watches. God, we got so many. I've got a waiting list. There's some people who have some extra ones, and this watch is just incredible. It was having a watch made by the very best. You end up with the very best. I mean, the best, well, what for us was, if I don't want to argue about the very best, but I'll say the top tier of watchmakers, of dial makers, of case makers, of hand makers, everything was. And then what we did, we had a good, I think we had a very good strap maker and buckle maker. They're separate. And so what a lot of us have done is that I wanted a gator strap, but you never order a gator strap on a watch coming from Switzerland, because they'll stop it and say, look for cites paper or something like that. So always get a leather or canvas or rubber strap. Never bring even if it's perfectly legal, they don't do it. But once you're here, this one is from AB Concepts in Paris, um, ABP Concepts, and they have beautiful, really gorgeous watch bands, and they're not cheap. But this one I got a great deal on it for a. They had some kind of one of those Mad Friday sales or something like that. I got in on that. But it turns out this strap was just really nice. But the other one is Jean Rousseau, and one of our guys got a Jean Rousseau black one. God, it looks great on this watch. I got a red one, and they sent me an orange one. So I told them, I don't want orange. I want something sort of burgundy to go with the color of the hands. And so they're working on that. And I'll get that pretty soon. But the black really looks classy on the thing. Oh, anyway, that's another thing too. It's sort of fun learning about when. Well, one thing I learned is that I thought if they made dials, they'd make the hands. Well, that's not true. Or if they made cases, they would make dials. Well, that was not true. Some do, I suppose, but it's like everybody is specialized. And once you see what they've completed, man, it's really gorgeous. Um, secret. This was something I forgot who I was talking to about this, but we were talking about doing research on, the whole, we're doing research on watches. So many people look at it as a chore. Any research I've ever done on watches, I just find something I'm interested in and start poking around and finding out about it. And that's the way to me, that's what a hobby is. If I'm, when I was writing books, my God, I'd have these huge stacks of books all around my desk and have to going back and forth. I go to the library, and then later on, it was everything, so much was online. But that was work, but I learned how to do it, and now it's fun because I learn about watches, and that's what I was talking to, Brian about is you do the research not because, you're like digging a ditch or something. You're doing it because it's your hobby, and it's fun to learn about stuff. Hi, Raj. How you doing? Parallel watches. They are interesting. Take care, Hans. Hey, Velvia man. How you doing? Don't forget Nomos. I will not forget Nomos. Anyway, well, it looks like the jig is up. My time is done. Thanks, Rancher. Anyway, this afternoon, what I'd like to talk about is, what are some plans for 2023? In other words, you're thinking, well, we've done this for 2022. What are some plans that you've got for doing something with watches in the new year? Anyway, take care, everybody. Be safe. Stupid COVID's still out there, so just be careful.